The implications of the 2023 spelling test for schools is quite similar to previous years in that there are 20 spellings in the test, and the spellings are made up of words taken from the Key Stage 2 curriculum. So the national curriculum in the appendix has a framework for what spelling strings are taught to years 3 and 4 and also to year 5 and 6. There is a spelling word list for all lower Key Stage 2 and upper Key Stage 2. Interestingly, none of the words on the Key Stage 2 spelling test this year came from the word list. However, 12 of the 20 words did come from the year 3-4 curriculum. So again, that's another huge implication for our schools in that the year 5 and 6 teachers have got their own framework of spellings to teach. But when it comes to the Key Stage 2 spelling test at the end of year 6, 60% of those words this year were actually testing the year 3 and 4 content. So schools are almost considering, how do we review all of the spellings from lower Key Stage 2 and teach the new content from upper Key Stage 2? Interestingly, when we look at the QLA for spelling and we look at the 7 least well performing words, 4 of them come from year 3 and 4 and 3 of them from year 5 and 6. And actually, the least well performing word, which was less than 30%, was the word number 19, optician, which actually comes from the year 3 and 4 curriculum. So when we look at the QLA, the statistics support that our pupils in year 6 perhaps are accessing the year 5 and 6 spellings, but they're not fully reviewing the spellings from the year 3 and 4 curriculum. And that has huge implications for teachers across the whole of Key Stage 2. In order to prepare our pupils to be able to access the spelling test at the end of Key Stage 2, there needs to be something really secure in place for teaching spelling. Sometimes pupils in Key Stage 2 have a spelling test, but actually what we need to ensure and what schools need to ensure is that spelling rules, letter strings, and obviously the exceptions to every single rule that's in the English language, they need to be taught consistently across the whole of Key Stage 2. So first and foremost, schools need a spelling scheme or a teaching approach to teaching spelling that's got the reviewing of the previous year's spelling strings and content from previous years. The other tip, perhaps, in terms of raising standards in spelling is looking at the vocabulary that's being taught across school. So lots of the words in this year's spelling test, some schools might say pupils struggle to even understand what the word was. So spelling number 16 was protein, which we know is from the year 5 and 6 spelling string, but actually some pupils may never have written the word protein before. So they may have known perhaps the spelling rule, which is an exception to the rule, but what they may not have understood is they've not written the word protein. And lots of spelling specialists and experts would say a child needs to write a word lots and lots of times to be able to get it into their long-term memory and spell it. So we have to kind of consider how many times would a pupil have written the word protein. And interestingly, spelling number 20 was the word current. Obviously a homophone, and the word current in terms of what we eat. Lots of pupils will have written the word current in a scientific terminology way, but that wasn't the correct spelling of this word because the context is that the pupils needed to write the word current, C-U-R-R-A-N-T. The reason why 30.3% of pupils got that correct is probably because many of them chose the wrong homophone and wrote the C-U-R-R-E-N-T spelling, which they perhaps were more familiar with in terms of vocabulary. So using vocabulary and making sure that schools have a very consistent approach to the teaching of vocabulary alongside spelling to ensure that pupils really are able to play with words, play with language, and have fun. And just basically, I think the main message that I would like to share is usually when you're teaching a spelling rule, the pupils will laugh or groan when you say, and the exceptions to this rule are, and they are the words really that are in the Key Stage 2 grammar test. A lot of them are the exceptions to the rule, alongside those words that do follow the spelling string, like optician. But we know the issue with that is that the suffix is represented in different ways, and lots of pupils may have just selected the incorrect suffix for the word optician. There are many different types of resources that will support teachers to prepare pupils to be able to access the Key Stage 2 grammar, punctuation and spelling tests. One of those resources would be a resource that supports pupil revision and supports pupils being able to apply their knowledge across different activities. And this is the Achieve series. The Achieve series targets pupils who are at the expected standard and pupils who are at the more higher standard. It's also got a practice book and a revision book so pupils can work through examples with a flowchart visual that helps them to really understand what is the question asking them to do, and then there is an opportunity for them to apply that in activities. These resources can be used in school, in the classroom, or perhaps for homework. A second resource that I would like to mention that would support the teaching in a different way would be to look at the NTSA tests. Now, these are used slightly differently because rather than a classroom resource, these are used for schools to be able to track pupils' data across time. So pupils can be tested in different year groups from year 1 to 6, and schools are able to track perhaps year groups that are underperforming, or when they look in more detail at the analysis of the questions, they would be able to perhaps see that vocabulary or pupils being able to join sentences with clauses because they were the questions that lots of children in that year group got wrong. Perhaps that's an issue with our progression maps of teaching. So the tests can be used firstly and foremost to standardise scores across school and be used in pupil progress meetings, but they can also be used as a check for the coverage that's being taught in that year group to ensure that teachers themselves can reflect and consider that all of the teaching of the curriculum has been done that academic year.